The 2023 season is right around the corner, and what better way to start this year off than with some expectations for players? Now, considering that most of the fan base is Jazz fans currently, it's only right to start with them. And more importantly, the most recent acquisition that they made, which was John Collins, in exchange for Rudy Gay and a second round pick, which really after this next season he could prove was a steal. Credit to Danny Ainge once again, just managing to make things happen. But it did come as a cap cost to them because obviously Atlanta felt like they weren't progressing far enough and they felt too locked in. So they felt it was best if they unloaded John Collins and went ahead to proceed with more cap space to possibly make moves later on down the line, which fair play. But if he ends up recovering to the player that we expect him to, it could be another lethal weapon for the Jazz. Thanks for tuning in to another video. As always, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Let's go ahead and get right into this one. Now, he was drafted back in 2017 at the 19th pick overall by obviously the Atlanta Hawks. He is 6'9" with a 6'11" wingspan, and he's up now to 25 years old. But he's reaching that point where you want to see where his prime and where his ceiling actually exists. This is obviously his 7th year going into in the league. However, it's a little bit interesting because he did end up suffering an injury that lingered through last season, and he ended up recovering and things started looking a little bit better as far as the type of player he was after the All-Star break. But before then, things were looking kind of bleak because you saw a player who started out in the league shooting roughly 34% from three on limited shot attempts to somebody that blossomed into a 37-38% shooter. Decent sample size considering that he does run typically the power forward spot. After he ended up injuring his finger, it's believed that it happened back in 2022 against the Detroit Pistons. It was diagnosed as Botanier deformity, which essentially means that in his right ring finger, there was a rupture, which essentially caused a massive protrusion to appear on that finger. So basically it looks like there's a big lump near the joint area of his right-handed ring finger. However, one doctor said that the recovery would be fairly quick, and obviously we didn't see that necessarily be the case because it lingered for so long. However, the most interesting part was immediately after the injury, starting the 2022-2023 season, he started out shooting 24.8% from beyond the arc, which obviously is roughly 13% lower than what you would expect him to on a decent volume. What ended up happening was after All-Star break, it jumped to 37% on his attempts. Now, obviously, that didn't end up recovering him from the way he started the season out, but it did make the numbers a little bit less egregious and tasteless to the eyes. At the end of the season, he did end up playing in a total of 71 games and averaged 13.1 points, 6.5 rebounds, 1.2 assists on 50.8% shooting and 29.2% from beyond the arc. So obviously a career low shooting from beyond the arc, but considering that he started out the season shooting 24, 25-ish% and shot enough attempts just to get that back up close to 30% by shooting 37%, made things a lot more easy to stomach. Now, this upcoming season, he'll obviously be in the starting lineup alongside Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen, with some interesting play as far as minutes go when it comes to the number 9th overall pick that they selected in Taylor Hendricks. Now, before the injury, he actually shot an impressive 165 for 421 beyond the arc. Now, that works out to roughly 39%, which is elite, especially when you consider that he does shoot from the power forward spot, which allows a lot more floor spacing and a lot more ways for guards and other forwards to just attack the basket and allow bigs to work their way underneath the rim. During that initial stint after he was injured, he did end up shooting 46 for 191, which worked out to that 24%, which made it very difficult to watch at times because most of the time when it came off his hand, it didn't necessarily look right, obviously because he did have the protrusion still on his ring finger and that is on his shooting hand. But it also just ended up missing in a lot more awkward ways than you were traditionally accustomed to seeing from him. After the All-Star break, he did end up drastically improving and shooting 41 for 111, which worked out to that 37%. Now, obviously, he just didn't get up enough shots after the All-Star break to kind of even out the planes entirely, but that's still a decent enough sample size considering that the first time he shot only literally 80 more threes after the initial injury, And afterwards, you still have a sample size of over 100 3-point attempts that he made. Now, one thing that was interesting when I was looking at his shot charts from beyond the arc was after the All-Star break, he did end up shooting more corner threes, slightly more catch and shoot threes, and a few more open threes were available to him from the standpoint of just when he caught the ball, when he was in position, and when the shot left his hand. Not all these numbers were extremely significant, but considering the fact that he did have 111 shot attempts from beyond the arc, it is important to note where exactly those shots came from, and it is relevant compared to the fact that he did end up shooting 191, almost 200 attempts while he was injured. I decided to go ahead and come up with just a short idea of roughly what I expect to lowball him at and what I expect him to probably see as his ceiling this upcoming season, because the Jazz do have a lot of players that need to find their roles, need to get more comfortable in the offense, and just need to find who they are in the system and as a player in general. With that being said, I felt like him averaging between 15 and 18 points was reasonable. Obviously 15 on the low end, 18 on the high end. 6.5 boards at lowest, and probably 8.5 at the highest. I think that likely he'll still end up averaging 1 assist, but maybe like 1.3 is low balling and 1.9, 2.0 is probably the peak of what we'll expect out of him from playmaking standpoint. Looking at blocks, I expect him to average probably 0.9, 1 block a game to maybe 1.2. He's never been significantly impressive when it comes to specifically shot blocking, though he is somewhat of a deterrent on the defensive side of the ball. He's just not known for being like Walker Kessler, for example. And now that he plays on a team with Walker Kessler, even if he does have the feet to stay in front of guards, which we know he does and he's consistently shown the ability to, just to be able to slide and be there, him being able to funnel somebody down to Walker Kessler, who's blocking over 8% of the shots that occur when he's on the floor. And at the peak of his abilities last season, we saw him play roughly 29 minutes a game and average 3.2 blocks a game. So you feel really comfortable with this defensive squad, especially if Lauri Markkanen continues to improve at his craft. But with that being said, go ahead and let me know what you guys think about the analysis in the comments. Tell me if you expect him to score more, rebound more, assist more, or if you think that his numbers are going to see a slight decline. Now, admittedly, he did have somewhat of a regression season this past year, and now that I expect him to be healthy and seeing what the trends were looking like after the All-Star break, I do think that his hand is back, maybe not quite to 100%, but close enough to make him a viable threat from beyond the arc once more. With that being said, go ahead and like the video, comment like I said before, subscribe, turn on those post notifications, and join the Patreon. And as always, good morning, good evening, good night, no matter where you are on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in to this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.